Hello everybody, and welcome to this week's lecture series. We are going to be talking about medical prefixes. So we're going over each of those component parts that are within various medical terms. So the focus this week will be on prefixes. So I'm going to begin with the learning objectives, and then I'm also going to review some of the learning goals and objectives that were associated with test 1. So I will kind of take up the nature of the fill in the blank style questions that were on the test, just to review what we've already gone over in previous classes, but to reiterate kind of what we were looking for on the test. So for the general learning objectives though, for this unit, these include defining the term prefix. So we're going to review what a prefix is. Again, we did go over this more generally, especially in week 1 when we talked about the component parts of words. But now we're just going to focus more on specific prefixes and discuss those categories of prefixes that were brought up in the week 1 lecture as well. So we're going to identify prefixes related to size, quantity, time, location, direction. Prefixes provide really important context for a term. So context such as, again, location, time, quantity. So giving us number, size, directional information about a medical term. This can therefore change the meaning of the term depending on which prefix is added on to a given combining form and suffix. So we're going to also discuss some concepts or medical conditions and also medical procedures and specific prefixes that are associated with them as well. So let's review basic word structure. So this slide probably looks familiar because this slide is from your week 1 content, but as part of the review and as part of kind of the basis of test 1, I wanted to bring this back up. So, as a review, medical terms are built from word parts, and we call those parts of a word component parts. And we've discussed the different types of word parts. We have the prefix. The prefix goes at the front of the term and changes the meaning of the term. For example, if the prefix is endo, meaning within, that would change the meaning from if the prefix was peri, which means surrounding. So it provides that context and changes the meaning. So for example, endocardium refers to the within or inner lining of the heart versus the pericardium surrounds the heart. The root gives the essential meaning of the term. So in the example that I just gave, cardi would be the root, referring to the heart. The suffix goes at the end of the term, and it can also change the meaning, and we really focused on suffixes last week, but we know that a suffix can completely change the context of the term as well, depending on what suffix is added to a given combining form. The combining form of a word is the combination of the root and the combining vowel. And that combining vowel has no meaning, but it connects roots to suffixes. So the combining vowel is most commonly an O. Think cardiology. We have the O after cardi, so the root is cardi. The O is the combining vowel, and logy is our suffix. So cardiology is referring to the study of the heart. And if we change the suffix, we could be talking about the study of the heart. We could be talking about a medical specialist who studies the heart in the sense of a cardiologist. So suffixes change the context of kind of what we're talking about regarding that specific root. So in terms of specifically for your test and for the short answer question, now we'll discuss the definition of a prefix, but we're also going to break down a medical term together and discuss and kind of remind ourselves of the notation that is important to use when we are providing component parts and the meaning of a term. So to begin, we'll start with the definition of a prefix. So when present in a word, the prefix will appear at the beginning, and it usually indicates location, direction, condition, quality, quantity. Now notice that I said when present within a word. The key is that not all medical terms will have a prefix. So not only do we have to analyze the first component part that's in a word, we have to determine if that component part is a prefix or if it is a combining form. Because a word does not necessarily have to have a prefix. And the way that we can determine if it's a prefix or a combining form is if we look at or analyze the meaning of that component part. So as I said, prefixes will indicate location, direction, quality, quantity, condition. So if that particular component part falls under any of those categories, this provides evidence that it is a prefix. I like to try to enforce this critical thinking aspect of medical terminology because, of course, you may be tempted to try to just memorize all of the prefixes, but this makes it a lot more difficult to learn, and it also kind of takes away the opportunity to gain those transferable skills, right? Of being able to analyze a term that you've never seen before and deduce what it means. So if we try to kind of critically analyze these words that we're looking at, we can use the information that we know about what the definition of a prefix is and what the definition of a combining form or a root is to determine what the component parts are and what they mean. Let's do one example. So first is the term gastroenterologist that I've added here. Does this word contain a prefix? Why or why not? So I'd like you to pause the video and take a moment to consider this question, and then press play and we'll take it up. Okay, so hopefully you paused the video there. Now, does the term gastroenterologist contain a prefix? If you said no, you would be correct in this scenario, and let's discuss why. If we break up the term gastroenterologist, first we see gastro. Now, if I were to add in a slash here, and I'm just going to put some spaces, we can see gastra with the combining vowel here, O. Even if I didn't realize that this was a combining form, I could say, okay, gastra. What does gastra relate to? And as we've discussed in class, gastra relates to the stomach, right? So we know that this is a structure, and structural terms provide the core meaning of the term. They're not relating to a location, direction, condition. They're referring to a structure, which is the stomach. So this provides some evidence that, okay, this must be a combining form, and we can see the O there, because if we continue on in the word, we see that there's more components, parts here. So as we proceed, we see enter, another O, and logist. So now we look at enter. Is enter a suffix? Well, it's not at the end of the word, so it's not a suffix. Therefore, enter must be another root, and in this case there's an O after it because the suffix ends in a logist, so we see that O there, and that designates that we're at the end of our combining form here. So entero refers to the intestines. So in this word we have two combining forms, and we have a suffix here, logist. Now, another indication, because some people might say, well, why isn't it ologist? Like, why isn't the suffix ologist? If I do that, add our O here, why isn't it like this? Well, we know that when a suffix begins with a consonant, one of our rules that we discussed in week 1 is that a combining vowel is placed in between the root and the suffix, because this provides flow. So that combining form vowel here is not part of the suffix, it's part of the previous root. And we can refer back to our list of suffixes as well, and we'll see the suffix logist there. So it's a combination, again, of this critical kind of thinking process mixed with reviewing our tables and those terms that we've discussed in class and the component parts. So in this case, if I were to provide this on a test and the question asked for the combining forms in this word and any suffixes, I would write gastro and comma in between to show the separation, just for the purposes of answering the questions, entero, and logist with that hyphen. We know suffixes have a hyphen at the beginning of them to designate that they come at the end of the word and there's something that will be before them. Prefixes, and we see an example of a prefix here, a prefix will have that hyphen after it, designating that it goes at the start of the word and the rest of the term will come after it. If I were to ask you for just the roots in this term, we would see gastra, enter, and logist. Remember, the roots do not contain that combining vowel. The combining vowel and the slash with the O designates the combining form. So this is a combining form, ner-o. The root here would be just ner, N-E-U-R. So here's another example, polyneuropathy. Now, if we were to define these terms and provide the definition, if I were to ask you what is the meaning of this term, again, based on the rules that we discussed in week 1, when we define the meaning or provide the meaning of a term, we begin with the definition of the suffix. So we start by indicating the suffix and what it means, and then we go to the start of the term. And we read left to right. So step 1, the suffix pathy, see how it's written with that hyphen there. Pathy means disease, damage, disorder, condition, even suffering. Now we read from left to right. Starting at the left, the prefix poly. We'll see today, poly means many. And then we see neuro, so we see that combining form neuro, or the root ner, means nerves. If we provide the meaning of this term, again, we start with the suffix. So damage or disease, and then we go left to right. So damage, disease, of or affecting many for poly, nerves for neuro. So suffix first, then prefix, combining form or root. So this is basically the approach for answering those questions. We did a bit of practice on this prior to the test, but I just wanted to reiterate and review this approach, especially because we're focusing on prefixes today. So, prefixes provide context about condition, as I said. So, location, quantity or degree, time or direction, status or condition. So, location, example here is subcutaneous, sub meaning under, that's our prefix in this case. Quantity or degree, an example here is hypoglycemia. Hypo means low, below normal, too little. Something to note with hypo, and you'll see this for multiple prefixes, and I'll point these out as they come along, but there are certain prefixes that can point to both a quantity or degree, but also provide some location information. So in the example of hypoglycemia, in this case, hypo is relating to a quantity, right? So low blood sugar, or below normal, or too little. But if we think of the word hypochondriac, and specifically as we discussed in the organization of the human body unit, we saw the hypochondriac region of the abdomen refers to the region of the abdomen that is below the rib cage. Hypo in this case refers to under, and chondra refers to the ribs. So this would be pertaining to below the ribs. Now, we'll see this in some examples here.